another vlog. I think we're on vlog number 12, maybe 13. I can't keep up with them. But I believe I've talked about this before on one of my vlog videos. I've just talked about this story so much that I can't really keep up where I've talked about it. I know I've talked about it like on Facebook, like just going on people's posts, and they're talking about like the DS and all that stuff. But yeah, I want to talk about the DS and the PSP, and why the DS got so much more attention than the PSP. So just a little like time machine, like going back then. The DS was massive. It was so big. It was like more popular than the PSP. When I would get on the school bus, everybody would just reach in their backpacks and pull out not a weapon like how a lot of stuff is happening today, but a lot of people would pull out the DS. And when you pulled out the DS, you already knew what game was inside of it already, and that was Mario Kart. If not Mario Kart, Mario Party for the DS. And if not that, if all else, it was Super Mario 64 for the DS, and like playing like Party. But for me, it was always Mario Kart, and it was such a huge thing. Like we would be walking down the halls. Hey, you got your DS? We're gonna play some Mario Kart. Yeah, I got my DS. I got fully charged. And that's what we did on the school bus, and we would have so much fun. That's how we met a lot of people, was because we played on the DS. We played Mario Kart, and we'd be like, hey, you have your DS? You got Mario Kart? Yeah, I got it. And I'm gonna beat you because I got this one strategy. And even then, we would talk about stuff like that. We would talk about like, hey, I know this shortcut, or I know the secret, or whatever. I know how to unlock this. And we would tell each other that. That's how we got closer to be good friends. And that's just like back whenever, I wasn't born obviously, but that's back whenever the Nintendo came out. People playing not Link to the Past, but like Legend of Zelda or Zelda 2, being like, hey, I'm stuck on this part, do you know secret, or what am I doing wrong? And people would be on the school bus and talk about it, be like, hey, I know how to help you on this because I've done this. Or you should be like, hey, I found this out, I want to tell everybody this, and sell like pieces of paper that have like a code on it. But yeah, that's just like, that's what we did as kids, and it was awesome. But I don't really see a lot of kids doing that anymore. One of the main reasons, because I'm not in the school bus anymore. But the last time I was on the school bus, that just wasn't the case. But yeah, why did the PSP lose to the Nintendo DS? And we all had the DS Lite. We didn't have like the original DS. But I had the black one too. And I think that was like one that everybody else had was like black, and then like maybe blue. Like just not navy blue, but maybe blue. Because the DS one costed less. It was cheaper than the PSP. Yes, the PSP was more powerful. It had really powerful games. I mean, like Gran Turismo. You couldn't play Gran Turismo on the DS because it just would not be powerful enough. And if you had like ported it over, it would look awful. I'm not saying the DS games looked amazing, but you could make out. And plus, that wasn't really like a big thing. It was like, oh well, these graphics are terrible. I'm not going to put my hands. Oh, excuse me. I'm not gonna put my hands on this. Where we've gotten so spoiled now with newer games coming out, we have to have it at 4K. We have to have it at 60 FPS or more. If it's 30 FPS, it is awful. It is just terrible. But if it's at 1080p, it's just awful. We've gotten so spoiled, and I have adapted my mind, my brain, into playing older games and getting used to them, and then whenever I upgrade to like the Xbox 360, I'm like, these graphics are amazing. I remember I played for a while, it was like weeks, maybe even months, of just playing Call of Duty on the PS2, just going like through a campaign. Call of Duty 1 was very frustrating. I couldn't see a thing. But I was just playing on the PlayStation 2, and then once I finished all the Call of Duties on the PlayStation 2, I upgraded to the Xbox 360, and I played like Call of Duty 4, and that just blew my mind how everything was like, we just went from one generation to like what felt like 10 generations. It was like mind-blowing. But now we've gotten to like a plateau where it's like, yeah, the games look good, it looks better than this, but not like a huge difference. So it kind of feels like we've gotten to like a plateau. But back to the PSP and the DS, yeah, like I said, the DS was cheaper than than the PSP. But I think what really sold it was Mario Kart and Mario 64, Mario Party, and not even just like Mario games, but like like Namco Museum. We played that a lot. It was just a lot of like really, really good multiplayer games, and then yes, there was the really good single player games. So yeah, they had really good multiplayer games, and I can't really say much about like multiplayer games for the PSP because I only knew one kid on the bus that had a PSP, and he just didn't. The games he played just didn't look fun to me. I'm like, this game is so fun on my DS. I got Mario 64. Like, what? It's crazy. I did like this really cool move on Mario Kart. But yeah, it was just I think what also was a big deal was a lot of people had the Wii. A lot of people grew up with playing the Wii, and even earlier consoles, people grew up playing with the GameCube. And if you're like Dad still had his Nintendo or Nintendo 64 or Super Nintendo, you grew up on that. A lot of people grew up on Nintendo stuff more than Genesis or and I wouldn't say really grew up, like there wasn't a lot of people that grew up with PlayStation, because a lot of people grew up with PlayStation, a lot more so with PlayStation 2. So you kind of think like, oh, PlayStation 2 sold very, very, very well. I think it was like number one for the longest time of like most selling consoles. But I think like with the newer generation, we kind of grew up more with playing the Wii or the GameCube. I grew up with the GameCube. And whenever you usually got it for your birthday or Christmas, like you got like the DS or the Wii or whatever. So that's just what you had. If everybody was like, oh, well, if the PSP was cheaper than the DS, I'm sure there'll be like a twist. It'd be like, okay, well, PlayStation, the PSP is a lot more superior than the DS because it won by popularity. Now, if I were to choose now, like, what would I choose? PSP or the DS? yes, the DS is awesome, and now with the modding community, we can emulate a lot of stuff. We can emulate older games, games for the system. I would kind of have to side with PSP, and I've dealt with a PSP, and I've emulated a lot of stuff on it, and emulation on that is really good. I can't really remember off the top of my head if emulation for the Nintendo 64 onto the PSP or the DS, or I have a 2DS XL. I can't remember which one worked better. I think on the DS it worked a lot better than the PSP. But then again, Nintendo 64 is very hard to emulate. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a lot of like bugs. So I gotta make my turn right here. But yeah, it mainly the DS won by popularity. It was a lot more fun because there was a lot of really good multiplayer games. Yeah, that's about it. That's just what I want to talk about. Yeah, what's up?